All right, Justin, what's up, man? Glad to have you here. I know we've been talking about doing this for a bit.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here, man. Dylan, it's amazing that I had this opportunity to go down this path and having passion of talking, with you and what you already do with MindLock, and then, going through your course. It's been amazing, and now I can help others on the same way.
Yeah. We'll get into that too, kind of the work with Monlock as a mental performance coach, which is going to be awesome. I think it'll be great. I mean, I'm sure you've told your story 1,000 times, but as for context, or if anyone's been kind of living under a rock, kind of walk me through maybe the early stages. I think people kind of get to certain highlights of your career, but I'm more curious about kind of how you got started with your athletic career and kind of when you started to realize like I might be good at this. I think for every athlete, you kind of you don't really get to control when you start sometimes that your parents have put you in or a coach or whatever. But I think you always have that moment where you're like, I might actually be good at this thing.
I feel like I was fortunate enough to be able to express myself through sports, but also through music and art because my parents just put me in everything. I grew up as the only child, even though I have siblings. I'm just that much younger than my siblings. So my parents put me in baseball, they put me in swimming, they put me in football. I played piano, saxophone, trumpet, all those things. And the last thing I found was actually track and field. And I
Wow.
remember making the track and field team and bringing home the jersey and showing it to my parents. Like, look, I made the team. And they looked at each other and they just bust out laughing. They was like, you, slow guy, the one that's so slow around the house, you made the track team? You're fast? And I was like, yeah. So they went out to my first real track meet and they saw a different side of me, a competitive side, a side that was hungry, a side that really wanted to be the best version of himself, especially in the game of play. And ever since then, they were my biggest fans. They went to every championship, Olympics, World Championships that I've been to, and they've been to a couple of regular track meets as well.
That's really cool. That's funny that came as a surprise. Did you notice the speed in other sports, like whether it was baseball or soccer, or whatever, you just playing outside? Like, could you tell at a certain point, like, oh, like maybe I'm just good at these sports too because I'm faster than everybody? Or was it not until you dedicated it to only the sprinting side that you were able to kind of recognize the strengths?
Well, I think it took me a while because everyone's going to label you as the fast guy. So then you feel like that's your strongest attribute that you bring to the table. So growing up, I was like the fast guy. There was other fast guys as well, but um, I felt like track was home of speed, so I had to be able to be well in that area. But I did well in football. I had to understand that there was a timing component when it came to football. You're thinking about, the quarterback taking a three-step drop, seven-step, five-step, things like that. You got to run your route within that timing to be able to make sure you're open for the ball. No one taught me that at an early age, and I had to learn later on that timing was everything. I remember watching highlight films with Coach Gruden from the Buccaneers. I was part of their summer camp, well, I'd say mini camp, and he just called me gold medalist. He like, gold medalist, man, you gotta understand timing. I was literally running my route as fast as I could, like I was running 100 meters. And I would be out of the screen and I would just break up the whole play because of my speed. So I had to learn how to be able to gauge my speed and not realize that I had to use 100% every time I gave effort.
It's a good point. I think people see speed as kind of one thing, not realizing how dynamic it is. But depending on the sport, like you're going to use it at different times. I think, like, I mean, the World Cup for soccer was just happening, and I don't watch a ton of soccer, but one thing I noticed was that guys aren't really running at full speed the entire time. They're waiting for their time. Sometimes it's almost being sneaky, letting a play develop, and then last minute sneaking by. So I can imagine in football too, it's not just about how fast can you run the route, but can you be shifty? Can you fake to one side and get them to look one way and go the other way? And it's all about how the play develops. And just as much as you don't want to get somewhere too slow, you kind of don't want to get there too quickly because either way, the ball's not coming at you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You just, I think that also comes with maturity and understanding not only the sport that you're in, but the talent that you possess. Like when to give full effort, when to be able to know, okay, this is more of a endurance process than it all raw speed process.
Yeah, and that's a good point about kind of reaching certain levels and being surrounded by guys that are there too with a similar skill set. I think like there must be a point where you kind of look around and you stop. being just the fast guy and you're surrounded by other fast guys. Like, for me, when I was growing up, I played a lot of soccer and other sports, and I thought I was fast, right? I was like fast for, my age playing soccer, but man, there's no way I would have survived like, a 100-meter sprint, right? So at a certain point, you go from being like a big fish in a small pond to opening it up and realizing that, wait a second, there's a lot of other fast guys too. Like, can you remember a couple of moments or maybe one that stands out to you where you kind of recognize like, man, like there's other guys here. Like I need to really kind of get to work now.
So, I've been through my career from, let's just say, middle school, high school, all the way even through college and professional, where it always was like one guy that was like as fast as me or faster for whatever reason. He might have been older or more seasoned than me. And I was always playing bridesmaid to bride to a limited amount of time until I was able to, overpower or become faster or have better knowledge of understanding how to compete and be able to overtake them, right? But the moment I realized that when I got to that professional ranking at my rookie or sophomore year, and I was out one time I was in Germany and I remember giving my all running a race and I got fifth place. And I was like, I gave all I had in this race. And I can't believe that I didn't get first, second, or maybe even the worst third. I went back to the hotel room and I just was so distraught and down on myself for not being better. I just sat in the bottom of the tub and just let the shower water just run on me and just be like, wow, woe was me, right? And that was the moment where I realized I had to pick myself up and say, hey, it's not about you being fast because these guys are fast too. It's about you being smarter, understanding what realm you're in, understanding how to be able to compartmentalize your emotions and allowing your logic and mental to be stronger so that now you could execute better, have a better game plan when I go out there. Another time was actually I was at the Prefontaine Classic. I was the guy in 2004 who was the poster child, right? For the Olympics and that guy for Nike. And I remember walking into the arena in Hayward Field and seeing on the side of a building my whole face, the profile of my face like this. Ah, and it shook me. I've never seen myself large as life. It
Wow.
shook me. And I remember getting in the blocks, gun going off, and I just forgot all of the technique that I was supposed to have once I entered into that race. And I remember watching everyone fly past me, zoom, 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 and I got seventh place out of eight people. I almost closed the gate. And I remember walking over to my coach and walking over to my shoe sponsor at the time was Nike and just apologizing to them. I'm like, I'm so sorry that I didn't show up today. And they was like, you got this. This is in a month or 2 months, it's not going to mean anything. The moment that you need to be prepared for is the Olympics. So you need to get ready for the Olympics. And from that point on, I was like, all right, I'll never look at myself or advertisement and think of myself larger than life and just be grateful that I have those eyes on me that's going to cheer me on or represent me. And I got to go out there and do my job.
Yeah. Wow. I think it's funny. There are certain lessons that I think you can't learn until you've experienced it, although we try to, kind of explain it to people. I think one of the misconceptions people have around success is like, once I get there, whatever there is, okay, things will get easier for me, right? Once I get that Nike deal, once my face is on a building, once I'm the guy that everyone expects to go out there and win, okay, that's when some of the pressure comes off my shoulders and life gets easy when I get there. And I think what, athletes notice a lot of the time once they do elevate and get to that next level in whatever sport that they're in is that, oh, you thought that there was pressure now, just wait. With every stage that you climb, the pressure gets, even more intense. There's more expectations around you. You start to feel, some doubts and some what ifs, the stakes get higher. So is that kind of something that you notice? At least that's what that story sounds like to me of like, a moment where a lot of people would have been so envious to have their face on that building, in a way that created so much more pressure than if it wasn't in a way.
Well, definitely for sure. I think a lot of people who saw my face on the side of the building probably felt it was premature and saying like he hasn't even arrived yet. He's still he just got off his collegiate campaign where he did win six NCAA titles, but this is the big boy arena. This is, world championships, Olympics. This is where it happens at. And I think that's where I felt like I needed to stand up and make sure I was 10 toes down. And what you invested me as a company and you invested me as a coach, I had to make sure I delivered. So I had to be really focused on who I was and how I operated out there. And that's what kind of gave me that wake up call going into 2004 Olympics. And I just never looked back after that.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And did you find that you found ways to navigate that pressure? Because I think that's another misconception again, that, when you become a champion, when you become an Olympian, world champion, all of that, you find a way to eliminate it altogether. Oh, they don't feel pressure. They look so cool up there. But in reality, I think you're feeling pressure and stress and worry, but you're navigating it a little bit better. Maybe because you felt it before, maybe because you're able to kind of anticipate it ahead of time and work yourself through it, or remind yourself situations where you've already overcome it before. But I think as you grow, again, it's not that the pressure goes anywhere, but your ability to navigate it gets a little bit stronger. I'm curious for you, especially as you work through your career, like what were some things that were helpful to you in terms of managing that pressure and stress, not eliminating it because it's not really possible, but just kind of working with it and not letting it create underperformance in the way that a lot of the time like stress can create underperformance.
I think for me, I try to tell other athletes and the ones I work with, you have to learn how to be bilingual. Pressure's not going anywhere. You're working to get to the top of the mountain, to be the best in your event, to be the best in your sport. But do you think that pressure just magically is going to dissipate by the time you become a champion, when you hoist the trophy, when you're standing on that podium with a gold medal around your neck? No, the pressure transforms. Because now that target that you were running for or competing for, guess what that target is? You can't see it anymore, but that target's on your back now. Now everyone sees that you're the man or the woman. Now you have to operate at a level to where the world thinks that you should win every race you get in. The world thinks that you should break a record every time you step on the track. The world's looking for you to be non-human because they feel like only non-human people can achieve the success that you've achieved at such a high level. You have to realize what your rhythm is of success. You have to operate in that rhythm. You can't go on someone else's rhythm. If your coach or agent or even other competitors or training partners will tell you to do X, Y, and Z, that's great. But what makes you successful? And you got to find that within yourself first, because if you don't, you're constantly going to be navigating through confusion, and that pressure is never going to go away. And that pressure is going to constantly weigh down on you. And then you're going to start questioning who you are as a competitor and as an athlete.
Yeah, I think you've said it before that, pressure never really goes anywhere. It just changes form. It looks a little bit different, right? It takes a new face, and either way, you've always got that challenge that you're managing through. And the best athletes in the world aren't going to be the ones that find a way around it, or cut corners or find a shortcut, but just kind of push through it and trust that they can. And you kind of referenced there too, like looking to coaches or sponsors or other athletes, and sometimes looking for inspiration there. I think with a lot of sports, especially in track, like there's a lot of personalities. There's a lot of personal style, and it can change. I think, if you look up and down the line, you might get, very, very talented guys or girls, but with different personas, different approaches, different styles. I'm curious. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the entire gauntlet from top to bottom of different personality types, different levels of animation. Some people, right, like Bolt, are going to be super in your face and dancing. Some people are totally kind of locked in and don't
Yeah.
flinch at all. But both can go out there and deliver. Like, do you notice that it happens a lot of the time where when people aren't too sure of their kind of current identity, that they'll pick someone that they like and just kind of try to mimic their way? Like, I'll give you an example. I know because I work with a lot of MMA athletes and combat sports. Like when, McGregor started popping off in 2016, like every new MMA fighter wanted to be McGregor and do the strut, right? And my thing is like, man, but there's so many different flavors of success. Like, yeah, you've got McGregor, but then you've got like a George St. Pierre. Like you've got, again, a guy like George is arguably, or not even arguably, he's better overall with a totally different mindset and approach. Who's to say that like you shouldn't mimic that? And then you're kind of playing the wrong game if you're constantly chasing, right? So I can imagine on the track side, everybody wanted to go out there and do some dance and be bold, when in reality that's just not going to suit everybody. So I'm curious what your take is on kind of finding your own rhythm and approach versus just identifying someone that you like and trying to copy them.
Man, I tell you what, it's so funny because you watch individuals kind of reach their stardom, and then you see people trying to emulate them if it comes to the way they run, or either, like you saying, the way they approach the event, even at the start line. When Bolt arrived, he was very showman-esque. Like he would just be out there, hey, blah, 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 yeah, 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 at the start line. But that's because that made him comfortable. he realized like all the hard work that I have and I've accumulated to for this moment, I want to have fun with it because I'm definitely confident that I can get the job done, right? And that's what makes him able to go out there and be very, showman-like and say, "Hey, I'm here." But then you see like going down the starting line, all of a sudden you see these other guys starting to do certain things and gestures and being like more like animated when they necessarily wasn't that before, right? And it never really elevated their game or their stats when they come across the line. I think they're searching for success and they look and see that and try to emulate it, thinking that's going to give them success. Me and Bolt and I are two different individuals, especially as the way we approach track and field and how we approach the 100 meters. I needed to trick myself thinking that I have everything to lose, and I have 9 seconds to fight everyone in the world for this victory. So I would get on that line and I would be so intense. I would be a savage, like my shirt, and I just be get out there and saying, I got to give you the fight for 9 seconds. Even though I'm a great guy and I try to be, very chill and, almost like how Bolt is on the track, I'm like that off the track. And how I am on the track, I see that in Bolt off the track. It's more serious. Um, but for me, I have to be that guy who's realizing these 7 to 8 other guys, they're taking money out of my pocket, food off my plate. I have to go out here and win this. There's nothing that's going to hold me back from winning this, achieving and getting that victory. Now, on the other hand, you'll have people out there who operate better in comfort, right? And that comfort is saying, hey, I'm relaxed, I'm here, there's no pressure. This is what I'm showing the audience. Let's have fun, let's do this thing. But for me, it was I'm battling and I'm a warrior for 9 seconds. And let me show you what I have. So you have to find who you are. And over time, I had to like find that within me. I would come to the line and I would be like, more animated. I still would be aggressive. And by the time I get in the starting blocks, I was tired because I was being too aggressive, too animated. And then in times where I just been too lax and I didn't give enough, and as I come across the line, I was like, man, I could have had more energy. So I pictured myself, and I do these vision practices, and I pictured myself of what I would identify myself as, and I would try to embody that. And along the way, I found out one day, looking at a storm in the distance and watching lightning strike in that storm, but not hearing it. And I said, that's me. I'm a quiet storm. You see it and you see how powerful it is, but you don't necessarily hear it. You don't feel it yet, but you know it's on the horizon and it's coming your way. And that's how I looked at myself every time I stepped on the track as a quiet storm.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I think everybody has a frequency that they need to tap into in order to compete at their best, right? It's like, different radio frequencies. You can turn the dial and, depending on what station you land on, it's country, another station, it's hip hop. But, you might have your favorite radio station, but if you drive out of town and you try to hit that same number, it's going to pull up a totally different genre, right? So you can try to turn the dial to the same spot, but depending on where you are, you're going to get a totally different station. So I think the goal ultimately for every athlete is like figure out what your frequency is. Like you were saying, tap into, what mindset, what identity do you need to kind of click into in order to deliver your best performance? And if that's who you are and you need to be animated and in your face, go for it. If that relaxes you and that focuses you and that gets you locked in, by all means, go for it. But in your case, like you said, it's that quiet storm. It's I don't need to waste my energy. For someone like you, being too excessive could drain the energy that you needed to perform at your best versus for someone like Bolt, maybe that kind of funnels back to him and it re-energizes himself. And it's like, that's why there's no reason to compare. The same way that, if two people go on a diet, you can eat the exact same food and have different reactions because your body's just going to handle it differently. Your brain is the same way where you could have the same routine as someone else. It doesn't mean it's going to activate it. So it's cool to hear that, not only were you able to find that rhythm for you, but that's a really cool story to help visualize like how you did it. Do you have any recommendations for if someone's listening to this and they're like, man, like I haven't found it yet. Like I don't know what that mindset should be. Should I be animated? Should I be kind of more locked into myself? Should I be chatty or not? Like how do you, unless you just say, hey, go storm watching and go find something outside that speaks to you. Like what's a good way for an athlete that's kind of coming up now to kind of find that identity that helps them?
Man, you got to look at it as what is practice truly to you? a lot of athletes nowadays use practice as just auto control or autopilot in a way where they just go out to practice and they go through the motions and they're like, oh, I'm just preparing. I got like 3 weeks, 4 weeks to go, and I'm just going through the motions. And bit by bit, I'll get better and stronger physically, yes. But are you practicing also your emotions and mentally? Are you thinking of a strategy? Every time we had block starts, I would come out with the mindset I'm getting ready for a championship. I'm at a championship, and I will warm up like I'm at a championship. My coach never had to tell me that because I realized that you can't replicate the Olympic finals. You can't replicate the world championships. You can't replicate those rounds. But what you can do is you can practice being in those situations mentally at practice. Once you're going through that process and reps, and I remember times where my coach or teammates would be like, man, why are you so serious today? It's just practice. I was like, yeah, but practice leads you to the best performance of your life. And that's what I'm looking for, the best performance of my life. And my best performance is always, I want it to be at the Olympic finals. I want it to be at the championship. I want it to be when I come across the line, I break a world record. And if I'm not training myself to believe that I can arrive at that moment and capture those moments will always elude me because I just went through the motions of practice and not really took advantage fully of what practice really is, which is condition yourself, mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think being intentional is such a an unlock for training potential. I think a lot of people treat training as just exercise, right? And it's two different things. Exercise is just, is your heart rate up? Are you sweating? Are you burning calories? That's exercise. But you could be on a exercise bike, turning your brain off, watching Netflix, and you're exercising, right? But you're not training. And I think when you're training, like you said, showing up with an intention, with a focus, not just kind of showing up to go through the motions, but what am I looking to achieve today? Not just from a physical and technical point of view, but mental as well. But it just goes back to certain things that are behind the scenes that you don't see when you see everybody line up and cross the finish line, or they have their face on the building, is you don't see the work that's happening behind the scenes. I think everybody sees the medals, they see the results, they see the highlight reel, but there's so much that goes on, especially for a world-class athlete, that nobody ever sees. I'm curious for you, what were some of those crucial moments that no one really saw when it came to your training process or how you approach the game that, allowed you to separate yourself from everybody else and achieve the level of success? Those kind of things behind the scenes that, again, don't show up in the highlight reel, but if it weren't for those things, you wouldn't have had those results.
So I would say two different scenarios. So one happened every year, which is you go through your fall training. And as a sprinter, that means that you're doing endurance runs, endurance workouts. And usually short sprinters like myself, we don't like that at all. 500-meter repeats, 250 ladders, 300 meters, 400-meter runs, things like that. And it taxes your body. And you're just kind of like, going through the motions because you're just trying to survive, right? Um, but I realized once I got to, the Olympic trials, and I know I was at that threshold of that finals and making this team to go to the Olympics, I would tell myself that day, Justin, this is why you did all this training for like the last 7 months. All those 500-meter repeats, all those times you were throwing up on the side of the track, all those times you were sore and these knickknacks, hamstrings, quads, all these things that you worked through to get to this point, don't let it be in vain. Go out there and achieve what you're supposed to achieve. So I learned how to embrace those workouts that I didn't want to do. And we all have those workouts we don't want to do, but they're necessary. What's the old saying? A necessary evil, right? So I always looked at those workouts as a necessary evil. It tormented me and it tortured me, knowing every Monday through the fall training I had to see these 500-meter repeats or these 100-meter repeats. But over time, I realized they weren't as painful, as bad as I thought they were, and I actually learned how to conquer them without faltering mentally. And then now I just mess up the whole workout. And the other thing was for me is I kind of understood how to navigate through those processes. And I remember in 2014, I had an undefeated season. And usually if someone has a great year, you're thinking, okay, cool. I found the secret blueprint and I'm just going to keep doing this over and over again. And that's when I realized even when you lose and win, stagnation can be there. because now you're just thinking about, I'm winning. I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to fix anything because clearly I'm perfect enough to be able to keep winning. And it can be furthest from the truth because however you're operating, your opponents are watching you. Your coach, their coach, and them are sitting back watching videos of your races. They're figuring out how they can beat you. And even if it's not your direct competitor at that point in time, you're having younger athletes who are still in college or high school who are looking up to you as like you're their idol and they're watching and emulating you. And then by chance, if they ever get a chance to race you, they already instinctually know exactly how you're going to run because they've been watching you for years and years and years. So in 2014 to 2015, I changed that whole rhythm for myself and realized, okay, I need to step it up a notch again. Well, how do you step it up if you're undefeated? So I would go back to my base training. I would lift more. If we had sled pulls for 60 meters with a 45-pound weight, I'll throw a whole nother 45 pounds on top of that. If we had to go into the gym and we had to max out and squat for 1 rep, I'll max out for 2 reps. I'll max out for 3 reps with that same weight. So I'll push my body to a boundary where it's never been before and past the fact of, I think that I've arrived as a champion and try to take it to another level. And 2015 gave me an amazing year of being once again going through the regular season undefeated, but also making history by running some of the fastest times back to back to back to back to back. And that was because I put it on my shoulder to say, I need to evolve even more and think outside the box and bust open this box to give a different version of myself.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's so easy when you pull ahead, like you said, take your foot off the gas a little bit and go, okay, I figured it out. I've worked my ass off to get here. We can cruise a little bit. And I think a good mantra that I have for this is to just extend the gap. If you've created a gap, extend the gap. And I think that can work long-term career-wise and also like in an actual race. If you're ahead, extend the gap. How much can I win by? If you're ahead career-wise or throughout the year, okay, let me get even more because like you said, that target now is just on your back, which means you can't see it, but the pressure is there. And you don't want someone to kind of surpass you last second. So being able to extend the gap, I think, is a good mindset around that. And kind of talking about mindset and kind of transitioning a little bit too into more of the mental game stuff. Like, I mean, you've seen, I think we all know people who look amazing in practice. They train hard, they look great, they're crushing it, they're smooth, fluid, and then competition comes around and just it's a delivery issue. And I think those are the people that get tormented the most mentally because it's such a frustrating feeling. And, there's people who I'm sure the public will never know their names because they never, achieved a certain level of fame or status. But, behind closed doors in the gym, they were crushing it, right? What do you think creates that difference, or why do you think maybe the mental game can play a role in that delivery, which is that talent will get you so far, but I think when you look at guys and that reach that level at the very top, there's an execution component, which is that it's not just about what you can do, it's about what you actually do and how you show up for that. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on kind of the mental portion of delivering your skill consistently.
Yeah, performance anxiety always stems from the fact of organized chaos in sports. Once again, you can't replicate what competition is going to look like on the day of competition, but you can be able to work different aspects of your race strategy pattern, your preparation that's going to be vital for you to tame that organized chaos that you're going to have in those meets. And I've watched a lot of athletes not understand that, and they go to practice and become king of the hill at practice. They run some of the fastest times, they're in the front of the group, they look great. Because in their mind, they realize that if I don't get it right the first time, I have 3 more reps I can get it right. But then they go into a meet and they realize, oh, I don't have those 3 reps. I don't have those 4 reps. I have to go out here and do it in 1 rep and get it all done. And then that's when the anxiety comes in because now they realize, one, I'm competing against people I haven't trained with, which I'm familiar with, but at the same time, they are on the same level as me and I have to compete. If you are aware and confident in how you perform at practice, you should be able to level yourself up at least 2 more notches to bring that same confidence into the game of play, right? So all the athletes who are going to be listening to this, coaches, anybody else that's able to pass on that tip is don't get comfortable in practice. Think of practice as a form of competition and think of cutting yourself short of saying, I have 3 reps, I'm comfortable. No. What if you have 1 rep? Let's get it done in 1 rep. What does that look like? Because now you are exercising and navigating yourself through that performance anxiety that you will see at a competition for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's it. It's anticipating, knowing that no, like the butterflies will be there, the nervousness will be there, the stress will be there, and a part of that is just accepting it and trying not to fight against it, and then recognizing that okay, well, if I know it's going to be there, what can I do to prep? And because I know it's there, when it does hit me on competition day, well, how can you be caught off guard by something that you expected? And I think that's a great kind of tip for people to remember as well, is that if you promise yourself that this is going to be the day that you're not nervous, well, when that inevitable nervousness hits you, you're going to freak out versus just expecting it, knowing that no, like this is going to be the pressure that I feel and I'm okay with that. But when it comes, I know I'm ready. And even going back to all those things that you were talking about, the work that you put in, the necessary evils, it is one of those factors where, as difficult and grueling as it is, it directly impacts your confidence because the harder you work and the more you prepare, the more confident you'll be. I think a lot of people want to know how to crack the code to confidence, right? It's probably one of the most common questions. How do I work on my confidence? How do I get more confident? And I think one of the answers is just the more you prepare, the more confident you'll be. It's if you didn't study for the test, it's hard to be confident to write it. If you spend all week studying, all month, whatever, the textbook front to back, you'll probably feel pretty good about it. So it's about that preparation leading to confidence. But it's uncomfortable for a lot of people because practice can get hard. It's easy to cut corners. You have to hold yourself accountable because the coach can't look over everybody all at once.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, big factor for that. And did you notice that it was helpful when you compete at competitions of that caliber? We're talking World Championship, Olympics. Is it just as intense every single time, or do you feel like once you hit one of those massive events, it helps you set the tone for the next one in terms of managing those expectations and feeling a little bit more comfortable the second time?
Unfortunately, it's always that intense every single time. Now, if you stay around the sport long enough, you get to realize that there's a cycle, rhythm, system, whatever you want to call it, to where you're going to see the same usual suspects. Those are the ones that's going to make it to the finals. Those are the ones that are going to make it to the Olympic trials. Those are the ones you're going to be competing against to get on top of that podium. And then you'll take it another level in and realize, okay, they run a certain way, they have a certain style, or they have a certain race strategy or pattern that they stick to, which also means they have habits. So if they have these things that can be helpful for them, but also can end up being counterproductive because now you have that knowledge as their competitor to realize how they approach their races and what their weaknesses are and what their strengths are. And now you can be able to combat them and be the best version of yourself when you step on that track. But that energy, that pressure is always there because those moments define winners, right? And we all want to be a winner. And in our sport, there only can be one. There's 9 to 8 people that line up, but only one can win the gold. And those odds mean that they're against you, strongly against you, you know? So you have to be able to, one, realize that losses are actually lessons and winning is temporary. You have to be not obsessed with the win, but realize the win is a byproduct of you being obsessed with the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think, I mean, all sports at a high level are so mental in terms of the demands. I think, especially back when you were competing, I can only imagine that, where we're at now in terms of an understanding around the mental game is a lot more advanced, the same way that sports science kind of everywhere is there. Like, have you noticed that that's been trending a little bit more up recently in terms of athletes kind of recognizing the importance of the mental game or being able to take some control over it or maybe hear other people talk about it? I'm curious, especially over the decades that you were competing and not just, at any level, but at the highest level. Have you noticed a kind of an uptick in the mental game training?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like mental game training for the last couple of years has been on the rise. Um, Early on in my career, it was really taboo to be able to say, oh, I need to mentally train, or I need to talk to a therapist, or I need to be able to get this off my chest. If for whatever reason, we as athletes feel like that's weakness and we shove it down inside of us. But then it creeps out in different ways and it seeps out in your performance. And then people are like, oh, what's wrong with him? Or what's wrong with her? She must be in a slump. not realizing like you're struggling or treading water in all that pressure and all that anxiety, and you're trying to figure out how to get out of it, but you've never exercised how to be able to compete at a level of understanding how to navigate that pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think a lot of people have that misconception around like, oh, it's what's that say about me? What's it does it mean that I'm weak? Does it mean that I can't deal with it on my own? And it's like, well, you have a coach for everything else, right? If you have a coach for everything else and you would never assume that that makes you weak or you work on your strength and conditioning, it doesn't mean that you can't lift the weights on your own, you're not strong, but it's having a specialist kind of in your corner, have their own perspective and help get the most out of you. And if you do have that natural ability, natural toughness, resilience, whatever, imagine what that could look like with the right kind of team in your corner. So I think that's kind of where slowly the perspective's changing on it, but I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger, which kind of leads us to now. So a lot of people who are watching this probably don't know that for now you work as a mental performance coach with us here at MindLock. I think that's super exciting. I know that, I'm pumped to have you on board. I mean, it's funny, we were talking about this before I hit record. There's so many things that former world champs and Olympians can do. You can attach your name to a tequila bottle. You could come up with a t-shirt brand or whatever. There's a lot of things. I'm sure you get pulled into different directions, but it's a little bit more hands off. Like when it comes to the mental game and actually working with athletes yourself to develop those mental skills, like what interested you about even going down that path and learning how to do that in a more structured way?
Well, for me, I think that I naturally was a strong competitor mentally. I learned and I could see the big picture early on as I competed. Even when I lost races, I didn't look at it as a loss. I looked at it as how can I be better? How is this individual better than me? What are they doing better than me? And what can I do to make sure that I'm the top dog next time we step on the track? So I always was re-engineering like um my losses, even my wins. I would sit there and reverse engineer and say, okay, this helped me win. This is detrimental. That's why I lost. And then it would give me clarity next time I went to practice and worked on certain things. And communication. Communication with your circle is vital. From emotional or logical standpoint, expressing yourself to your coach or your agent and say, hey man, this is gonna be a tough one, coach. Like this is what I don't know if we can make it through this one. Or they may even say it to you, like, I don't know if we can make it through this one. And you not allowing their emotions or insecurities to dictate how you perform. And you look at them and say, we got this, coach. We've been working for this. I'm gonna show you what I got today. That's understanding how to have um, accountability for self, but also the accountability that comes within your circle. Very important that you create a circle because that's the circle that's going to lift you up, and that's the circle that's also going to keep you grounded.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, when it comes to mindset, a lot of people can sometimes assume like you have it or you don't, you have that confidence or you don't, or that belief system in yourself. I think, for us, we've been working together for nine. It's funny, I was going through our Texas. He's been 9 months already, which is pretty nuts.
Yeah.
And kind of going through the training and the structure of it all and figuring out how to actually take those insights and form them into the right pathways. Like, was there anything you noticed along that way of kind of learning how to do this in a more structured way of like delivering this at scale, like not just saying, oh, people have it or they don't have it, but maybe understanding like specific skills mentally that all athletes could benefit from, or ways that you could kind of deliver that. So if someone's listening, they're like, yeah, maybe this could work for me, or there are certain strategies and tips and tricks that could be applied here. Kind of the lessons learned through not just taking your own insights, but adding more of like a formal background to it.
I mean, first of all, being a part of MindLock has been an amazing experience for me because naturally I feel like I'm that kind of person who understands mental performance. And then it was just natural for me to say, okay, cool. What can I do to be able to help the next generation or athletes that are close to me see what I see, feel what I feel, and understand how to be able to move and navigate like a champion. Now, me giving my own personal ways of doing things, it may work for some, it may not work for some. And that's what I learned through the training of MindLock. It's a language that's very broad, but it's also a system that you have to understand what other people and how they perceive pressure, competition, losing, but also success as well. And I had to learn how to navigate through that, set up a strong system to communicate and speak a certain language to each and every one of these athletes that I talk to and help them achieve the level of success that they're looking for, and but also learn from any losses that they had or shortcomings along the way and pick themselves back up and become stronger the next time around.
Yeah, 100%. I think thinking back to those first couple conversations we had, I think one thing we both connected on was that whole approach of like for athletes by athletes type of feel where, especially you coming in with your background. For me, I was former captain of Team Canada Taekwondo and fought on the circuit for a really long time. And I just think that relatability plays a huge role. And again, you can come up with systems and tools and strategies, but at the end of the day, there's a difference between just reading something in a textbook or especially nowadays with AI and ChatGPT, like you can go in and you can kind of type some prompts out and get a sense, but there's just a difference in lived experience and going out there and feeling it yourself and being able to translate that. Like, is that something that also kind of caught your attention early on and feeling like maybe why you could be really, really good at this is the just level of depth and that personal experience that you have and that relatability, being able to connect with athletes because you've lived that experience before?
Absolutely. And I also credit the fact of track and field was a great uh, teacher for me. You know, it's almost like life. Whatever you put into your preparation for life, that's what you're going to get out of it. It's same thing with track and field. You said it earlier, taking shortcuts and delaying your own success and process and saying, well, I'm gonna put this off for today. I'm only going to do 2 reps, or I'll finish those other 2 reps tomorrow. Like those are critical moments to where you that are going to define who you are as an athlete. And if you're constantly creating a habit of putting those things to the side, what do you think is going to happen on the day of competition? It's not a movie. You know what I mean? Like it's not going. You're not going to miraculously show up one day at a meet in line at the line, and all of a sudden everything starts clicking for you. It doesn't work that way. The magic happens with the preparation leading up to those meets, and it's hard for athletes to realize that because they're so caught up in their building phase that you have to kind of tap on the shoulder sometime and say, "Hey, be intentional on what you're doing because." As much as you want to win, you're not performing and you're not visualizing what winning truly looks like for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're right. Winning can look different and being able to define success is a crucial factor and it might be different for everybody, which is a good question for you, which is like when you work with an athlete as their mental coach, working on the mental skills, like what's a transformation that you're hoping that they make? What does success look like for you, maybe regardless of where the athlete is coming in, for you to feel like, you know what, we're doing good work here, like you're getting better, you're improving. Is it their confidence? Is it their ability to translate what they're seeing in practice onto the track at a competition? Like what are the transformations that you want to see in the athletes that you work with?
I want to start off with small victories because I always feel like small victories kind of reinforce your confidence. Because, like sometimes when you're trying to approach big victories without really understanding what it feels like to win, it feels more like a gamble. Like, man, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket of hopefully making this Olympic team. But you're not so much focused on, the process and the steps and races leading up for you to make that Olympic team. So for me, I love kind of like honing in and focusing with those clients on let's focus on the win today. Oh, today's just a duel meet. It's not going to be that serious. Yes, it is. It's going to be serious for you because now you don't have to really deal about that pressure. So now you can work on certain aspects of your craft. Let it be a long jump or a sprint or whatever you're going to do. And let's experiment a little bit. Let's see what it feels like winning from the front. Let's go out there and throw a big, you know, a big mark in discus or shot put like today from your first throw. Now let's look like what it feels like, battling it out and maybe saving it all and throwing it on your last throw. Big throw when the moment is tight for you. So I challenge athletes to almost have like a mad scientist kind of like effect where it's like play around with practice. Be intentional, but work on different aspects of who you are mentally and physically and see what works best for you, and say, "Hey, I found my rhythm. I found my cadence of how I can be successful." And then you put that into competition form where it's going to make you feel more comfortable once you're out there on the track.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Just kind of getting the most out of what you're capable of and not always setting the really long-term goals. They're important to have, but the short-term ones are, that's where you make your money. That's where you actually get better, you progress, you're able to be intentional with your time. And I think people overlook that the small victories, but you can't just take one leap and get to where you want to be. It's about, creating those small moments of success that end up creating that snowball effect in the right way.
And I told my coach, as I got better at it, I would come to practice and I would just tell him like, "Hey, coach, I'm going to work on my arm swing today." And he'll be like, okay. So I would go through practice working on arm swing, not caring about being in the front of the pack or winning the rep or having the fastest time through whatever practice we had. But I was constantly working on small things that made me better. So then when I did give my all in competition, I looked like a wholly, totally different kind of guy. My teammates sometimes be like, whoa, where'd that come from? Because leading up to this moment, you was third at practice. You may have the second fastest time because I was taking my time, slowing down, and really kind of honing in on my craft and really kind of sharpening myself for that moment that was going to come. And I executed flawlessly.
Man, I love that you brought that up. I think probably that's one of the biggest things that I see is people trying to win practice. And it's like, well, who cares? Like no one's keeping track. There's no record. You don't have a wall that keeps track of, everybody's practice results every day. You're practicing for you, right? And sometimes there's the irony of that the more you try to win in practice, the slower your development's going to be because there's a lot of blind spots that you're not taking advantage of. Like you said, if you're just working on your arms on one day, listen, if you're going to emphasize that, of course, you might not be the fastest out there, but you might actually be the one that got better at the highest pace because you figured out something that you isolated and you worked on. And if you're not isolating things and working on them independently, they're not just going to magically come together. So I think that's a really great point. And is that something that you would say to anyone that's watching is like, even though you're competitive, even though there's a part of you that's always going to want to win, it's like, I would rather win when it matters, but then learn in practice than, win in practice. And then sometimes you have to learn those tough lessons, out there in front of everybody watching.
Yeah, man. I remember having a conversation with my coach one day, and I was just at practice, and this is before I realized that I had to be more intentional. I was trying to win every rep. I was trying to be the best because I feel like if I am winning every rep and being the best here at practice, then I'm going to win all the reps and be the best during meets. Maybe, maybe not, right? But even with how he would set up the workout time wise, if he wants me to come through, the first 100 meters of the 200 meter reps that we're doing at 11 seconds, I will come through at 10 and I'll try to do 10 every time. And he would look at me and saying, "This is why I want you to come through at 11, because you're breaking the workout in a bad way to where now you're burning yourself out to where you're supposed to be running 11 seconds. And by the time you get to your last 200 meters of your workout, now instead of running 11 seconds or 10 seconds like you've been doing, now you're running 12 seconds, 13 seconds because you're burnt out. Now you have messed up the whole workout." And I didn't realize that. And I think a lot of athletes don't realize why workouts are set up the way they're set up because coaches intentionally need to see something from you and see if you can be able to navigate yourself at a high level through the whole duration of practice without falling off. But if you're giving too much in the beginning because you want to be that warrior, practice warrior or hero, and then now at the end of the practice, on those last couple of reps that you're doing, now you've fallen off and you're just trying to survive instead of thriving. You messed up the whole process for yourself. You messed up the process for your coach because now he doesn't see what he needs to see from you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it highlights the fact that mental toughness can mean so many different things. It doesn't always just mean biting down and pushing harder and being that warrior. Sometimes it's being flexible. Sometimes it's being smart. Sometimes it's being patient with yourself and, again, isolating certain things and being that scientist, right? So mental toughness, there's an entire spectrum of it. And grit is definitely a big part of it, but it's only a smaller piece of a bigger puzzle. So that's huge. I had a couple people send questions in.
Okay.
One question to go in is what's something that athletes obsess over that actually matters a lot less than they think?
Uh, Winning when it doesn't count.
Yeah, kind of perfectly in line
Winning
with
when
what
it
we're just talking about.
Great for your ego. I know you feel amazing. I know that win felt great. Holding those flowers, throwing in the stands, taking pictures, amazing. But what is it going to do for you 3 weeks to a month, 2 months later? You know what I mean? Like, of course, I want you to go out there with the intention of winning, and you should. but you shouldn't hang your hat on that win because there's many more battles to come and you need to focus on the bigger picture.
How do you balance, this is kind of my own question, but how do you balance that? I think as an athlete, that's probably one of the hardest things to do is like you never want to bask for too long in previous success because there's more to come. But you also don't want to look back on your career and be like, I never gave myself a chance to like be proud. At least I know for me, when I stopped competing, that was always one thing I looked back on. Like, you know what? Maybe I could have taken a second and been proud of myself or patted myself on the back. I think I was also very just, what's next? Job's not done. There's always another competition coming up too. I'm just curious. Again, this is kind of my own personal question here for you, but like, is there a balance? Is it something that you can't, it kind of is what it is. Like that's a sacrifice that you make, is sometimes just being so deep into your process that you try to reflect on it when it's done. Is there room for a little bit of gratitude or pride in what you've accomplished without it pulling your focus away? Like what's your take on that?
I think so. And I think you can find balance. It was very hard for me to find balance. I was so obsessed with the process that it sometimes turned into like paranoia of like, always have to be ready. Or if I celebrate this gold medal too long, then I'm going to get caught up. And now all my competitors are going to pass me by because I'm just so, hung up on the fact that I'm the gold medalist. And now my practice and performance and preparation is lax. And while these guys are really kind of like sharpening their daggers to go to battle more than I am. And I remember winning my Olympic gold medal in 2004, come across that line, getting on top of that podium, having the medal around my neck and the wreath on my head, and then going back to the Olympic Village, taking that medal off, looking at it, and then wrapping the ribbon around the medal, and then putting in the side pocket of my carry-on bag, and just say, I celebrated. Now we need to move on to the next competition, what is the 200 meters the next day. And I just totally forgot at points in times that I was the Olympic gold medalist in the 100 meters until it was like announced on the intercom at the beginning of the 200-meter, like competition and be like 100-meter Olympic champion just a couple of days ago. And I'm like, oh, because I was so obsessed with the process. I wanted to keep going. I wanted to be the best version of myself. And I didn't want to come across the line thinking like, man, I've been so caught up in my ego, been so caught up in my own victories that now I'm basically operating backwards.
Man, that's such a good, I can picture that so clearly. Now, what's funny is like, man, how long and how vividly did you picture yourself or visualize yourself earning that gold medal for the very first time? Like it goes back to when people talk about, oh, the journey, not the destination. And it's such a cliche. That's the one thing I don't like about cliches is that I mean, they're there because they're true and they've stood the test of time, but they've also been repeated so many times that it kind of like gets diluted or loses its meaning or people don't. But it's such a true point of, again, when people say it's about the journey, not the destination, like how many times did you probably visualize that medal and think about it and salivate over it? And you finally went out there and you did something that, what, a percent of a percent of a percent of people can do. And you looked at it, wrapped it up, and put it in your luggage. Like that's just crazy to me.
Every day of the Olympic year. So every day in 2004, I thought about being the Olympic gold medalist, what it felt like, what it would look like around my neck, who I'm gonna have to beat for this medal. But that vision work is amazing. And I hope a lot of people start working on vision work because you can do so much with vision work. You can just vision yourself on top of that podium, or you can vision how the race is going to unfold, or you can vision how your competitors are going to run their race. And all those vision practices that you have, it starts to create a familiarity for you. It's almost like getting your car and then you're driving home. Everyone knows how to get home, especially if it's your familiar city that you're in. You can drive home without GPS and know how to be able to navigate. Visioning, because you've seen everything for so many times going home. It's the same way as you would vision yourself going to the top of that podium. You need to be able to execute when it's time to execute, turn left when it's time to turn left, turn right when it's time to turn right. But you have visioned every step of that so it becomes familiar for you. And now you don't have to second guess yourself. You don't have to be cautious and tiptoe trying to get to the top of the podium and be like, oh, am I going to make it? Yeah, you are because you envision yourself doing it. And then when that gun goes off, you just let everything happen for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. You've created such a clear frame that when you step into it, you feel like you've been there before, you're prepared and you're ready to go. That's great. The other question is funny, it's kind of opposite of the first one. The first one was something athletes obsess over that doesn't really matter. What's something that athletes overlook that ends up actually making a big difference?
Consistency. I think a lot of athletes don't realize consistency. Consistency of your training, consistency of if you go out there and win, create a standard for yourself. If you won and you beat a certain amount of athletes, that's what I used to do. If I beat you in this last race, I'm gonna make sure you don't beat me in this next race because I leveled up my standard of performance, how I look at myself and all the people I beat. I'm not letting you beat me again. And if I get that opportunity, it just was your day. But if I have anything to do with it, I'm not allowing you to beat me. So consistency is always going to give you um, a level of confidence that you wouldn't have if you were inconsistent. You know, inconsistent people are going to be like, well, I guess today wasn't my day. Where consistent people are going to be like, I performed, I prepared. It just was a fact of they executed at a certain part of the race that I didn't execute, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to work on that. I'm going to change that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like how do I make this my day? This is the only day that you've got. Again, in practice, you take it for granted because there's always tomorrow. But, if this is the Olympic final, you can't just say, you know what? Let me try again next week when I feel a little bit better or I slept a little bit better. Like, this is it. This is it. We got to wait 4 more years until we're here again. I'm going to make this my day. And I think when you look at some of the best performing athletes that are super consistent, that's what it is. It's not that they don't run into challenges and obstacles and that they don't get sick or have bad sleeps or get injured. All of those things happen to them because they're human, but their ability to say, but despite that, I'm still going to go out there and give it everything that I've got. I think that's the main difference there too.
Yeah, and you always got to exercise your what if. I always tell the clients, I say, what's your what if? And they're like, what are you talking about? Well, everyone's always going to think in their mind, like, what if I win? What if I lose? What if I'm the fastest in the field, or what if I'm not the fastest in the field? Like exercise your what if and turning into a positive what if instead of a negative what if. We always like lean towards negativity first, thinking about how we need to be able to protect ourselves, protect our heart, protect our mind and emotions, thinking like, okay, I could lose today, it's gonna crush me. But what if you win today? Oh man, we gotta run into this headwind or we gotta run into this rain. Man, what if I run so bad today? Because all this, environment and rain and everything's gonna slow me down. I'm not gonna have a fast time. But what if you run fast in rain? What are people gonna say when they see that? What if you run fast into a headwind? People are gonna be like, man, he ran that into a headwind. So imagine what's gonna happen when you have no wind or a tailwind behind you. So you can grow your what if. You just have to execute your what if in a positive way. And that's going to give you a result to when you look back at it, you're going to be even more confident in yourself. Like, okay, you think the wind's going to stop me today? I'm going to step on the strike. I'm going to battle through this wind better than anybody else is. And I'm going to come out with a victory.
Yeah. Well, man, this is awesome. I think, anybody that is even thinking about this or listening, like, I don't know why you wouldn't take advantage of this and take advantage of working with you. I think it's such something that you just couldn't have done it. I think again, back when you were competing, I don't even know if you would have had access to someone like this at that caliber, that you didn't have to go in and drive and see them or, didn't have to wonder, well, have they been in my shoes before and just kind of take their word for it. Like the fact that you're able to sit here and work with your own athletes and really kind of provide them guidance. Like I think nothing can beat that level of experience and the way that you're translating it and even the way that you speak about these topics now. Like there's so many gems in here. So if you're watching this and you want to work one-on-one with Justin, like you can do it, which is the craziest part. Like you can work one-on-one with Justin. It's not fake. Sometimes someone will ask me like, okay, what's the catch? Or is it really going to be him? Or they're expecting like me to show up instead of you. It's like, no, it's going to be Justin. Just send me a DM if you want to start and you're interested and you think that this could be a good fit, or you think that you're kind of on the cusp of being able to get the most out of yourself, but there's a couple things that are not quite right, or you just know that you have more potential. Send me a DM on the MindLock Instagram page. You could try to DM Justin, but you'll probably be hidden in his request folder. This guy gets a lot of DM. Message me, I'll see it. You won't get caught in my request folder, and we'll set something up to be able to see if this is a good fit. But again, if any one of these parts resonated with you, a single answer, a single perspective, then hit us up, search up MindLock on Instagram, send me a DM, and I'd love to kind of see if this could be a good fit. But man, it's something that I think every athlete should be taking advantage of, especially working with someone that's been in their field, in their sport, experienced it at the highest level, and be able to speak to it so comfortably and with such an IQ, like man, it's unreal. But I'm curious, anything else that we didn't tap into that you think would be important for anybody listening?
Yeah, me being official with Mind Lock, just like you said, Dylan, just everyone tap in, reach out. We can be able to set it up. I love what I do. I love have the opportunity to talk to athletes, and you don't have to feel like you're in a slump to be able to talk to someone like myself or Dylan. Is the fact that you can be winning. And you still need to know how to navigate through those wins. So sometimes winners, and we both know as athletes, sometimes being a winner is very lonely at the top. You don't have anybody to talk to, you don't have anybody to bounce ideas or emotions off of as well.
Yep.
So remember, like, this is for you to be the best version of yourself, not to be able to get you to the top, but also find you and center yourself and bring you back to where you need to be so you can keep performing at a high level as well. So, thank you for the opportunity, man, to be able to sit down with you, talk to you about this and all the information that we're giving to these young athletes and clients that are out there. Like, this is for you, even for clients or future clients that are not even athletes. This is open for entrepreneurs, CEOs, because it's a universal, you know, path of success. How you focus yourself, how you think of yourself, how you approach those moments to be able to grab the victory that you need. It's all within that same path, sports or non-sports. You got to be able to know who you are so you can approach your moments.
Like we said before, extend the gap no matter where you are, right? Like you said, if you're at the top, it gets lonely at the top. Don't take your foot off the gas just because you're there. Like extend the gap. And I think this is one of the perfect ways to do it, especially when this is still one of the final, I think, untapped areas of training. I think strength and conditioning is very popular, physio, massage, recovery. Like there's so many different training methods over time with sports science that have become increasingly more and more popular. I think working on the mental game specifically is still one of those kind of untouched resources. And if you're able to take advantage of this now before all of your competition gets on board, why not? That's the lever that we can pull to make the biggest impact, and let's do it. So I think that's a great way to end it off. Thanks so much, Justin. You're the man. This was awesome. Really hope that everybody was able to get something out of this. Leave a comment if there's something that stood out. Any other questions? I mean, I'm sure we'll do this a bunch more. So if you have a question that didn't get asked or you're curious about, again, either drop a comment, send a DM. I'll make sure to ask him, and we'll make sure to continue this in the next one.